I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to Vlog 171, Academia on the Edge. You didn't know I was going to call it that. It's exciting. It's my pleasure. Of course, I've got a guest here who is an incredible woman, an inspirational woman, and one of the finest minds in the world. But why she's here, besides being one of the finest minds in the world, is she's walked an incredibly distinctive and unusual path through higher education. Dr Leanne McRae is the research officer in the School of Media, Creative Arts and Social Inquiry at Curtin University in Western Australia. She holds expertise in, I'm going to try, media studies, communication, cultural studies, tourism studies, creative industries, terrorism studies, disability studies, leisure studies, sports studies, city imaging. How am I going?
Yeah, I think that covers it.
But she's also got this fascinating emerging expertise in deviant leisure that we might also explore too. She completed her PhD early in the 2000s at Murdoch University. Bloody long time ago. I know.
We're old.
God. Speak for yourself, girl. At Murdoch University, she was, and you'll notice that I've used the word was rather than is, she was a revelatory teacher and a researcher still who is shaking the very foundations of knowledge. Whenever she sees a barrier or a border of knowledge, she doesn't just tap at it, she knocks that barrier down. So Leanne, welcome to the vlog.
Thank you so much for having me.
Is this as weird for you as it appears for me?
It's very odd. It's like we get the band back together. I'm very happy.
Yes, the band's back together. We've spent a lot of hundreds, nay thousands of hours together, and we're apart a lot of the time now. But when we come together, it's always very special. And we made a decision today to go hard. And in the McRae Brabazon land, when we go hard, good luck. I hope you enjoy it. So look, Leanne, let's start with the update question, if you will. It's been about a decade and a half since you finished your PhD.
Yeah.
Tell us about that decade and a half. Tell us about that time.
Well, it's been... I don't want to use cliches because I think cliches really don't encapsulate the complexity of what happened, but in many ways it was actually quite mundane. Well, it has been really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say it's been extraordinary and a roller coaster and all these wonderful, all these things have been happening. But it's actually been grind. It's actually been, start on such a good note, didn't I?
That's it. But you've been grinding out a living.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I started teaching when I started my master's degree.
Yes, at Edith Cowan University.
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was like 1998 or something.
Yes.
And I'm like 21 or 22 or something, and that job enabled me to have an income while I was doing doing my higher degree studies because I didn't have scholarship.
Yes.
So I could work one day a week. I lived in a box.
You did?
I lived in a box, but I could afford the rent, I could pay the bills, and I'd have the rest of the week when I wasn't marking free to study, to write, to do the things that I wanted to do. And so there was this kind of very aspirational type thing that this was kind of like a placeholder until I finished, that I could work, I could finish, and then move into, back in those days, a level A position.
Yes.
And, then onward and upward, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But that never happened. And so I stayed in that job in its various iterations for 15 years.
Yeah. So that's an interesting place to start, and the grinding out of a living, and you've made a great living.
Yes.
You've made a living, you've paid your bills, and you've never been on any sort of public support or public subsidy. You've stayed and you've earned a living and you've paid your bills through academic life, but a very odd component of academic life that we may get to.
Well, I was signing a new contract every 12 weeks. It was like, every semester, it was on a trimester structure, and I didn't know that I was going to be employed the next block. And so every time you kind of shunted up each cohort, you'd sign another contract. And so I did that for 15 years. And so there's a level of mundanity to that. It's just like, right, you're putting your head down, having to do what you need to do because other opportunities aren't manifesting for a variety of reasons.
And so you're ahead really, because that's where all of us are now. That what you've just described is international higher education. So you are 15 years ahead, which is why we're having this conversation, so we can learn from you and get a sense of what you're feeling about what did happen and what is happening now. So my next question is really, are you angry? Are you frustrated? Are you confused? Are you howling at the moon about the lack of quality posts in Australian universities? Where are you at, I suppose, emotionally?
Oh, that is such an amazing question. And if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I would have been depressed, actually. I would have actually been very disheartened. Yeah. And there's still a little bit, I still do feel a little bit of that, but I've gotten very zen in my old age. No, it's an anger, there's a sense of fatalism which perhaps is worse.
Yeah, it is actually.
I think that's worse, that I've gotten into, well, this is the reality that we're presented in. I feel very powerless to intervene in it.
Yeah.
And whereas for a long time, and this was where I came to, because I talked to you a little bit about this. I didn't ever feel like a very good teacher. I didn't particularly enjoy teaching, but I believed in teaching.
Yes.
I believed in education. And what I see now is that faith has eroded. Yeah. Because while I see extraordinary people doing, the job, extraordinary teachers, extraordinary scholars, infrastructurally, at a much wider level, there is such a mercenariness that exists within the system.
Selfishness,
that
self-absorption.
Those good people are constantly, treading water, keeping their heads above, and they don't have the opportunity to do the really good things, the really caring and supportive and transformative things that I think need to happen.
I think that's really powerful. And also at the same time as you were living that in the precariat academic workforce, of course you were saying Steve and I move around the world supposedly in permanent posts, for all our colleagues watching this, supposedly in permanent posts, arriving basically into the Hotel California time and time and time again, going, what have we done? What are we doing here? So supposedly even in permanent posts, they're not permanent because you arrive and it's a mental health facility. And we went through a series of jobs like that, and of course you were seeing that as well. So what are we aspiring to anymore? That's the great question.
Yes, I don't have an answer to that. And it's very telling that once upon a time, if a student ever expressed to me a desire to go into the higher education sector, I would be incredibly encouraging of that. Now, no.
Yeah,
I'm not encouraging of that so much. I mean, not that I have that particular power to
but
influence.
You do. But also I think what I'm trying to do with our students is, about a third to 40% of our students end up working in universities. But I want them to go into it with their eyes open. And in some ways, that's what this vlog series is about, is the best and the brightest and the extraordinary. Some bad things can happen. I'll use the word corrupt. Some corrupt things can happen. And, the way life turns, it doesn't end up that way. So there's going to be some happier endings we'll get to shortly, but talk to me.
But Steve said something really important to me that I remember years ago when I was feeling particularly despondent about not only the educational landscape, but the political landscape as well. And I was like, you do that throwaway line, I'm leaving the country. You're not really, but, I'm leaving the country. And Steve wrote back to me and said, please don't. We need, we need good people here. We need good people to be, making the difference that they can make within the system.
That's right. And look, he was very prescient, and you must remember this too. When we first met him, we met Steve pretty well at the same time, interestingly enough. But do you remember he said to us, because the Australian higher education system about 2000, 2001, 2002 was still sort of okay. Good people were doing good work, teaching and research was supported, the humanities and the social sciences were doing okay, our institutions were relatively balanced. And so that was reasonable at that point. But Steve did warn us both. He said, you're 10 years behind the system that I'm now living in. You've got 10 years. And actually, I think he was wrong. We had 5.
Yeah.
we had 5 years, and now basically the entire world is like what we're living in Australia at the moment. But let's get to something more positive in a really negative, soul-destroying way.
Okay.
And your first book, Terrorism, Consumption and Leisure, and I'll get the subtitle right because I love it, Spaces for Harm in a Post-Crash Era. Now, you're doing a seminar for Flinders University tomorrow. You have some enormous fans at this university. She's laughing, who have read this book, put it throughout their thesis, and they're just a little bit obsessed by you. Okay, so you're going to be doing a gig tomorrow with the people like they've cancelled work, they've cancelled tutorials so they can see you tomorrow. Now, this book has thrown a bomb, quite appropriately, at acceptable understandings of consumption, of leisure, of terrorism. So it's fascinating. I was in a gig last week and people were still talking about reception theory, and I'm going, really, guys? Really? We're still there? Good luck with that. But this book really throws a bomb at all of this. So how did this happen? How did this brain exploding piece become your first book?
Yeah, it's kind of a big angry thing, this book that I've written. It's not a big book, but it's a lot of rage and a lot of, well, and, you know, but actually productive rage. There's destructive rage where it's just, you know, like you say, howling at the system. But to me, this was a very productive experience. This was very much making connections across my professional experience in the Adjunct Academy, with my scholarly work, with what I was seeing as the way forward, as a way of also, firstly, answering some questions about a very, you know, inadequacies in actually understanding terrorism, basically. You know, this idea of, you know, people strapping bombs to themselves or getting into cars, and just the, you know, killing other people firstly, but also the destruction to the self, the destruction to themselves that they're doing, and that irrationality we can't seem to reconcile.
Yes.
Like, we sit here going, why are they so angry? And
see, I always argue in our culture, if you're not angry, something's wrong with you.
Yes.
And that's what your book says.
Yes. And I always felt that there was a very, you know, we are, but because they're poor and they're dispossessed. Like, well, lots of people are poor. They don't
strap stuff onto themselves.
So it was me really trying to, like basically the gap, like, let's make sense of this. How can I come to a better understanding of that? So it really was a knitting together of who I'd been, where I'd come from, what I'd been doing theoretically, scholarly, because I also, the footnote to this was that I was working in this college, the same job I'd have, and these poor students, they were international students. They were supposed to be coming and doing, like, bridging into the university.
Right, got it.
I was trying to make them do things.
Because, like reading and writing and thinking and creating.
Like actually writing these units that were theoretically challenging, you know, cutting edge new theory, sticking it in there, and they were completely like, what?
Flummoxed.
Like, what are we doing? Poor things. When they probably just wanted reception theory, right?
Yeah, but by the same time, I mean, this is what a university is, so you were giving them a taste of what a university is at its best.
Yeah, so what I was doing, I was basically, these units that I was designing and updating, I was constantly updating them, were basically my theoretical training ground.
Yeah.
Gathering up materials, trying to make things relevant for the students. So I was really kind of, you know, creating my own little university, my own little kind of, like, what it's supposed to, you know, like, research is even though I was in this very mundane, get the students through market, you know, get them into the real university, I was, through that, I was kind of crafting this kind of this scaffold for myself in many ways, which...
And you're contributing to some of the most important debates on planet Earth at the moment. I mean, claustropolitan sociology, the ultra-realist criminology. Hi, guys. I mean, Leanne, you're very much locked into that moment and movement. It's a minoritarian movement, but it's some of the smartest people in the world are working that stream at the moment, and that's where your book is positioned. Extraordinary. Now, you've now got, in the next year or so it's like, just like the gates have opened, right? So in the next year to 18 months, you've got a series of projects in place and a series of books in place. So this interests me because so often people write one great book and then they can't go again. It's like the second album, right? So you do one great album and then the second album, nothing. Oasis. But Stone Roses more appropriately. So, but you're not the Stone Roses.
Thank God.
No, you're more the Beatles. So what is now occurring? You've got all these projects. So how has that happened and where has that power come from?
Excitement for discovering new things. That's always been my motivation. That's always, it sounds like a very naive position to be in, but I was only ever a very average student. No, seriously, no, I was, because I was only ever a CB, like average student. But what I always had was the thirst. What I always had was I was interested in stuff. Like I literally finished my undergraduate degree and went, what am I going to do with this degree? What do I like doing? Well, I like learning stuff, so I'll try something else. And so I did a master's. Okay, I finished this master's degree. I still really like learning stuff. So I did a PhD. And so that still is very naively the motivation, that I'm interested in stuff, that I want to find out new things.
Intrinsic motivation to learn. Yes.
And so really, I'm striking while the iron is hot in the terms of that. I'm in a position right now where I can craft out the time for it. I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years.
And you've let that go.
Yes.
It seems to me in some ways you've let go of the planning. Like in 5 years' time, my career is going to be, all that's gone for you now.
No, it's all gone. Yeah. I just want to focus on the things that I'm interested in and trust that will build the next stepping stone and the next stepping stone. And it may all fall in a heap, but then another door will open and there'll be something else.
So you're still an optimist, but let's talk through the projects. Obviously, you and I are finishing off what will be Steve's last book on moving on up. So we're looking at third-tier cities, small cities, and their movement cultures. So it's the next stage, really, in physical cultural studies. So we're probably, 6 months away from that one, maybe 5?
I've got one more chapter to write for that.
And I'm finishing up the bits around it. So that's one, but tell me about the other ones.
Well, the second book for me is called A Crowdsourced Syllabus.
Yes, now this is interesting to me, yep.
So Crowdsourced Syllabus, a curriculum for resistance. So this has been really fascinating to me. There has been an emergence in the online environment, a series of curricula. Okay, thank you. That are around specific moments, events, movements. And so, for example, there's a Trump syllabus. There's actually 3 of them. There's a Trump syllabus. There's a new fascism syllabus. There's a Standing Rock. There's a Beyonce Lemonade.
Look, I saw that
syllabus,
and I saw it. And I would like to do that.
Yeah,
I would like to do that.
Me too.
But I find that odd because so they're like events. So an event. So it's not even like Trump studies. No. An event becomes a syllabus, which is then published.
Well, there's a hashtag that's attached to it, and it's scholars goes, okay, do you have reading that you think needs to go in this syllabus? Do you have assessment that you think should go in this syllabus or something? And so it's kind of like there's this hashtag, and you can contribute to the hashtag. Yeah,
I love it.
It's like it blows your brain away. So this, I think, is really interesting in terms of what is education, what is resistance,
what is public education, what is public citizenship.
Yes. So I think there's some. I haven't fully fleshed it out. There's the project for this year, for the next 6 months. Yep. That's what I'm going to be working out. How this has all come about. It started with Ferguson in the United States.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of exploded out from there. There's a Standing Rock syllabus, which is extraordinary.
That's the one I saw.
Yeah.
That's the first one I saw.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like the amount of material. They've actually got a full pedagogy in place.
Oh wow! See, that's almost a post-studies. I can't even think about that as a post-disciplinary space. But it's SOTL, so it's a scholarship of teaching and learning, but it's so much more, I think.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So this is astounding. Now, the next question, interesting, it comes directly from your answer there. And you and I are going to have a scrag fight about this, I think.
Okay.
You are an outstanding teacher who no longer teaches. Leanne is the best teacher I ever worked with. how many countries, where have I been? 4 countries. How many countries have I been? I can't even remember. 9 universities. The best teacher I've ever worked with. Like, there's you, and there's daylight, and more daylight, and more daylight, and daylight saving, and then the next person, right?
No, there's not.
Yeah, there is. So you just need to just calm the farm girl. So, but you are an outstanding teacher who no longer teaches. And sort of as someone who sort of trained you to teach and be extraordinary and change the world, I'm deeply saddened by that. So how is...
sorry.
No, it's your life. I've trained you to go be fantastic, and you are. But why?
Oh, it's soul destroying. I can't bear it. It just breaks my heart.
Right.
It really does. I always felt I was an adequate teacher. You taught me to teach. No, seriously, you taught me how to teach, and I took those skills and just... I'm very good at, you give me skills, and then I go and apply it.
And extend it and transform it.
I'm very good at doing that. I'm very good at taking instruction.
Scaffolding, I'd say, but still moving on.
But I always felt I was never doing enough. And that cascaded over the years as the education sector started to crumble.
It did.
And I felt like I needed to do more and more just to get them even to a basic, where I thought was an adequate level of critical thinking.
Yes.
And by the time I finished teaching, the cohort had changed dramatically. And I don't like to maybe speak about this too much because I feel like I'm very much blaming the young people, and that's not right, and it's not cool. But there is something dramatic that I felt had changed, that once upon a time you could be in a classroom, and even if you were only teaching 2 or 3 students, that were actually really interested, there was a breadcrumb trail that you could put out, and they would go off and knock themselves out and have a grand old time.
Be inspired, yeah.
I found that happening less and less and less and less. And
yes.
I don't know if it was just my own particular experience or my own perspective or my own headspace where I was at the time.
Yeah.
But I felt like that even if I wanted to challenge, just like shift yourself, just like sit this way and see that the idea from this way, there was an incredible resistance to it, and an incredible, this has nothing to do with me getting a job, so why are you teaching me this? That was it was a very strong culture that was coming through with the cohorts that I was teaching. Don't teach me anything outside of what I need to learn to pass this unit. And in many ways that's fine. Yeah, it's actually fine. There's a reason we have...
But this is a university.
Yes. So there's a reason we have outcome, and we have these things, we have assessment,
And rubrics and so forth for transparency, which I'm in favour of.
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of... But there was a real mercenariness about it. There was a real staunch kind of no.
Yeah.
No. And that really started to get to me.
Yeah.
And by the time of course I had a series of crises towards the end of that cascaded personally and professionally.
That's right.
And so by the end the day I realised I didn't have to teach.
Yes.
I was so relieved.
It was a blessed relief.
It was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. So just for everybody out there, you're probably as upset as I am, and I'm trying to not get upset. But I think this is why I wanted you to hear Leanne and look at Leanne today, because this is what the system has done to people. This is what the system has done to people. Firstly, it's made our students underachieve. So to lose that aspiration, that motivation, that desire, that passion to transcend, to do more, to be more, excellence, an excellence model for teaching and learning. We now have a compliance model of teaching and learning, and for truly outstanding teachers and educators, at a certain point after 15, 16 years in the adjunct academy, they'll go, you know what, there's an easier way to make a living. Isn't that extraordinary? Oh, wow. Now, you're speaking to our wonderful PhD students at Flinders University, and they are remarkable human beings, and you'll see a lot of them through the week. But you're also, I think, speaking to a lot of our PhD students around the world who are part of our YouTube channel, for which we are very grateful, and there's hundreds of thousands of people, and that's great. Now, you produced an incredible PhD. You've produced an incredible book with more coming. You're widely published. The other thing we're not talking about is how many articles and book chapters and stuff are you at? Is it 40 or 50?
Yeah, I never count.
I sort of did, and I put your CV in front of some people the last couple of days, and they were going, right, is this woman a senior lecturer or an associate professor? I went, no, she's not. She was in the Adjunct Academy, and now she's a research officer. And they were like, right, so what's going on here? So you're an incredible teacher, incredible researcher. Why are you not in a stable academic post? Let's just ask it.
Okay, good question. They don't exist anymore, I think, is the first answer to that. Or where they do exist, it's incredible. There's a whole load of other things going on that aren't just about your CV. That when the positions do come up, so am I allowed to say this on video?
Yeah, look, you probably are, because look, I always say, well, Leanne, I'll lead into it by saying, you and I have always said, and the wonderful Steve did as well, we did it by just sort of working it out, but we always thought about 40% of jobs that were advertised were already filled in some form.
Yeah.
Now, you know what, I think, from what I've seen in this life, it's probably much higher than that.
Yeah,
and where it's not is in probably the regional universities and the more edgy, innovative universities. That's when they're open, I think. But yeah, mates look after mates look after mates. I think that's the deal.
And you know, look, and maybe a part of me kind of is okay with it. 'Cause we had a situation a few months ago where a job came up, and it was kind of like this kind of job went round, and I was kind of like, this is interesting, this good job. And then it kind of came to, oh no, that's that person's job. They've had to reapply for their job. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So you go, oh no, I'm not going to waste my time. And secondly, that should be that, why is that person having to reapply for their own job?
So you're an ethical, decent person.
And, I mean, and maybe that's part of checks and balances, as, that people have to be accountable for the positions that they're in. But there's a whole series of complexities around that.
Yeah. And see, my worry is you've given up, and I felt you give up 10 years ago, because Steve and I were writing references, you're applying for these jobs, and you're being told, oh no, that job's lined up for somebody else, in the interview often.
But also, the other thing is my own unwillingness to travel.
I was wondering if you were going to go there. Yeah.
So I like where I live. I am a terrible, terrible traveller. The fact that I'm here is a goddamn miracle.
I thought thus. Like Perth to Adelaide, that was a bit of a stretch for me.
I have the worst sense of direction ever. I get lost places I've already been.
So do I. Yes, I still have to use a sat nav to get to the gym, mate.
Yeah, I get very anxious in unfamiliar places.
Yes.
And so that maybe if I'd made the decision very early on that, right, stop this adjunct academy, let me travel and get, maybe it would have been very different. Yeah. But I made the decision. I went for a job in New Zealand, I remember.
Yeah, you did.
I travelled and I did the thing and I did the gig, and I obviously didn't get the job, but I kind of made a decision in the hotel room after I'd done the interview and went, I don't think I want to move. Yeah. And see, this is interesting, because remember, Steve always said this, and I've always said it, and we've lived this, is I've always said, if you're prepared to work anywhere in the world, you will always be in work. And that may be nonsense, that might be a maxim that I've come up with, but I've never had a day out of work, but I'm prepared to pick up my entire life and move anywhere in the world tomorrow. And again, but I was at Murdoch for 10 years, and then for some reason I just decided, well look, let's go, because I think it was the way Murdoch was at the time. Well, we saw the writing on the wall, didn't we?
We
saw
did.
There was a radical restructure coming, and we saw that cultural studies basically being significantly marginalised.
Yes, that's right. And also, Murdoch famously, and they used to pride themselves, and they say, well, if you want a chair, I was an aspirant at Murdoch, if you want to be a professor, you're going to have to leave. So we get people to the point where we populate other universities' chairs. That's what a gentleman said to me, and that proved to be true. But of course, then Murdoch loses a lot by that particular practice as well. So yeah, look, and that was the only thing I would always have said to you, is like, if you were prepared to go anywhere, but then as someone who has gone anywhere, would you ask another human being to do that? That's a tough life too.
It's a really difficult question, but there's also a series of consequences to that, particularly because I live in Western Australia, because it's so isolated, because there are so few there's only a certain amount of jobs that exist, and they're shrinking by the year.
Yeah.
So
and everybody knows everybody else.
Yeah.
It's like Adelaide and Brisbane are the same.
Yeah.
Few number of universities. Everybody knows everybody else. It's a bit of a closed party.
So I may have just limited my options by making that decision quite significantly.
Yeah.
I think quite dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're into the end of our conversation today, and this has been as sort of upsetting and provocative and as potent as I hope it would be, because I think it is important to see, the future of universities is sitting next to me in many ways. This is our future, and Leanne is just ahead of us. But the next to last question I wanted to ask you is, what matters to you, Leanne? Because at this point, after all of this conversation, what is important? What matters to you in your personal, professional life right now?
Oh, the same thing that always mattered.
Right.
Making a difference, intervening, and the positive outcome of all this is right now I work in an amazing team. I'm a research officer, and look, I don't get paid as half as much as I did, but that's okay because I work with 3 amazing women at the very least, 2 amazing women, and there are various other people around me who I work with. I work in disability studies, which is enormously rewarding. You can't help but feel a bit warm and fuzzy about doing that kind of work, even though that sounds a bit paternalistic, sorry.
Yeah. But it's also, it's like, well, that's a social justice imperative. So you wake up in the morning and know you're going to make a difference.
Well, yeah, and that is incredibly rewarding, and I'm incredibly blessed that I'm able to do the work that I do. And it does give me the freedom to write the books that I want to write. So the things that matter to me still are the things that matter to me. They've just morphed into a different and more complicated way of doing things, and perhaps the way I should have been doing them all along, really, because now I'm forced to actually extend myself. Now I'm actually really, doing the theoretical work that I've always wanted to do, and sometimes I get frustrated, and I'm like, if I have to write a report or something, I'm writing a report, it's like this is what I did, all that work. The dream was that you could earn money and just write.
Yeah. You
could just do research. Guess what I do with my day? I write and I do research, and it's fantastic. It's a great gig.
Wow. So that's what matters. Last question, an important last question. You were a brilliant PhD student. You produced a brilliant PhD. The examiner said it was the best PhD they'd ever read. Brilliant teacher. Brilliant. Now, for the students in a PhD right now, what would you say to them?
Oh, enjoy it. Enjoy it. It's a great experience. You're really privileged. You're really lucky to be doing it. It doesn't feel like it a lot of the time, but it is the most exciting thing to happen, but it's the first exciting thing. And there are more exciting things to happen. PhD is a great experience, and you'll change through it. You'll be a different person at the end of it than you were at the start of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a privilege, hasn't it? An absolute privilege. Leanne, you were the best PhD student I ever supervised, the best teacher I ever worked with, and clearly you are the best academic scholar in the world. You remind us really what we should be doing if we had the courage to do so. So I wish you, on behalf of both of us, love, light and peace. Leanne and Tara, out.
Oh, thank you.
How was that?
Yeah.
How'd that feel? You're brilliant.
Oh.
Did you forget about the camera at a certain point? I completely forgot about the camera. I was going, I'm really interested in this. Did you forget? Or you didn't forget?
No, I never forget. Because I'm always worried about the faces I'm pulling. And you'll see I'll be pulling all these weird faces.
No. The hair looks amazing. The hair looks... No.